That's the oh wow, it's got a nice big.
Yeah, because it's far away.
That's nice. And then we put our mics on. Okay, good. Turn it down a little bit. Just to put it in the right headspace there. All right, good. That's fun. All right, good. Oh, okay, good. All right, we were just doing a little test, I guess, to see our better microphone system. Then we're looking up at the audience and we're talking about our Crises 2021.
What's the recent blow up?
The most recent? It's just how many dead in one day did I say in the US?
No, actually, the most compelling blow up is that guy saying that the healthcare system is about to collapse.
Our doctor saying, yeah. And they're having to make triage decisions about who's going to live and the amount of care and that people will get. And I guess there was a big number in one day. We just were talking about, and I guess it's like 350,000. I don't know. There's just lots of big numbers of cases and that type of thing. Triage. And then the other thing that was interesting about our other crisis is the dolphins. The dolphins are getting third-degree burns on their skin. And then they're going into, what is it called? What do they call that? Collapse of your organ collapse.
Yeah, they're going to shock.
They're going to shock, like they can't go to a doctor and have skin grafts like we would have if we had third-degree burns.
Right.
And they're having that because of the salinity of their water, of the ocean water. They are a coastal species. They live closer to the shore. And they, they're mammals, so they have to, they're up on the top of the surface to breathe. They've got lungs. They're not fishes. They're mammals, and they are getting really just they're very sensitive to the salinity of the water, and the salinity has become there's been less salt in the water because of the amount of flooding we've been having around the world. And the amount of flooding creates more water coming into our storm drains, into our oceans, and it becomes hyposaline.
Low salinity,
meaning low salinity, and they can only take that for a very short amount of time. And we've had so much flooding from our global heating and creating so much storms. And, we might not notice it right here as much, but in China, we've been watching all year the big floods that were happening.
They've had big floodings in the Midwest.
Yeah.
And
where else?
The Southeast.
Southeast.
It's huge.
Yeah, right. Florida is always raining now. It's just always been flooding.
And these dolphins are coastal species by and large. You don't really find them out. They're not pelagic like whales or some sharks. They tend to be coastal. You'll find them in shallower water. Well, that's where the rivers are dumping the floodwaters.
That all go to the sea. Areas. That all goes to the river, through the
all
rivers.
The floodwaters, when they eventually recede from land, they go to the sea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there's all this fresh water pouring into the ocean from these flood events.
Yeah.
And it's changing the salinity of the coastal oceans.
And the dolphins
are swimming in this stuff. Yeah. And it's damaging their skin, which is surprising. I would have predicted that, but
right. And it's been happening since Katrina.
We now live in the land of unintended consequences.
Right.
Welcome to.
And this is the damage that we're causing, from our global heating. And we're losing species here. We're losing it right in front of our face. We knew we got the warning of the monarch butterfly. Now we're getting the dolphins are going extinct. The giraffes, I heard, are going extinct. Who else? Anyone else Any other animal?
Well, pretty much every animal.
They're saying the 6 million.
Pretty much every animal
1 million. 1 million.
Give yourself a piece of paper.
Write all
take
your
a
animals.
pencil. Write all the animals you know. and except for like the things that urban animals
Rats.
like raccoons, rats, pigeons,
Mosquitoes.
yeah, they probably will do okay because they are associated with us.
Right.
So they eat our trash, they eat our
Yeah.
throwaway, our garbage, and
Yeah.
they do okay-ish. And we don't eat them. We don't eat raccoons, right?
Right.
But
Yeah.
every other type of animal has some commercial value or value as food for someone else.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So the every animal you could list
Mhm.
that isn't raccoons, rats, and possums
Pigeons.
runs the risk of becoming extinct in the next
Couple of decades.
20 years. Yeah, I
Yeah, a
would say.
couple of decades. Yeah, that's what
yeah.
that's what the report was saying.
That might even be a high estimate. A lot of the damage could be done very soon at this point.
Yeah. And then I was just thinking too, in terms of our other crisis, going back to COVID, we know the hospitals are saying, stay home. The nurses are crying, stay home, please help us.
Yeah, but they're the only ones.
I was just saying, that was what I was saying. The politicians
Nobody else
are
is
not
saying
saying
that.
They're saying, stay safe. What is the other word they say? Stay safe? Is there anything else they say?
No,
stay
they
safe.
say stay safe, and then they say and go shopping. I mean,
Right,
that's
go
essentially
shopping,
the
go to
two messages.
restaurants, support our restaurants, support our stores. That's going. They're not telling us to stay home. They never say stay home.
No, they never say that anymore.
And so
they said that for like the first 2 weeks of the pandemic as it came to the United States. And
right.
After that, somebody told them, no, you don't
say that.
You don't advocate that.
And then
that's not what you
even
do.
at city council, they were saying, everything is about going shopping and support our small businesses.
Yep.
Like I say, Mayor Liccardo was like, "Don't tell my wife," but that was just an aside being funny because it doesn't stop. It hasn't stopped. The advertisings we get from I get from Deb Davis is that there's now a new program to go to restaurants, and here's a discount to go to this restaurant. This is what they're serving. Look, and look at that meal. Doesn't that look yummy? It's like an advertise. I'm getting advertisements.
That's not supposed to be their job.
That's all I'm hearing from our politicians.
Make sure that we spend money. That's not supposed to be their job.
It's protect us from harm.
Especially during a pandemic. Their job in times of pandemic should be they're giving us leadership on how to protect ourselves and our community.
Harm. Yes, protect us from
harm. Okay,
yes.
And they're just not doing that. Nobody's doing that.
Yeah. So it's just it's just bringing to sharp relief what's happening with our politicians, and something my girlfriend Mary.
Yeah, if you had any doubts about their allegiances, that doubt should be cast aside. You now understand where their allegiances are.
And the thing is, like Kat says, we are not supposed to be talking about politics, religion, or economics. We only should be talking about our crises, and that's what Greta Thunberg says.
Okay, but
when you're in a crisis, that's all you talk about is crisis.
Okay, but it's not that I say that because I don't like those topics.
Right.
There's
it's just we're in a crisis.
No,
we're in a crisis.
Well, okay, fine, we are. But there's actually a very specific reason why I say we have to exclude our conversations around climate change from devolving into politics, economics, and religion. Yeah. And the reason why I say that regarding those three things in particular
and in relationship to
climate change, global heating, and climate change are actual problems in the realm of reality and physics and Earth system dynamics. Whereas politics, economics, and religion are made up.
Or phantasms of the mind, right?
And there are tens of thousands of economists, and there are thousands of religions, and there are hundreds of different types of political systems. And the reason why we have, but there's only one
Earth.
There's only one average global temperature. Okay, and the reason why we have so many of these other things in comparison, and why we don't have 10,000 different Earth average temperatures, is because those things are fake. And anybody can start a religion. Anybody can start a political movement. Anybody can have a different theory on economics. Anybody can write a dissertation in economics to have a completely different theory than the person sitting next to them in the same auditorium.
But the only reality is what's happening.
But there's one world average temperature, because there is one world, and the temperature is average globally, and we publish that temperature, and everyone agrees on it.
Right.
Okay, because it's real.
Right.
I mean, it's an average, but it's real.
And the scientific process is that there is, what is it called? Where it's, our monkey brain says, well, I don't know if that's the temperature. But what we have,
You don't have to know.
The thing is, the science, we accept the science because it has a rigorous,
Right. We trust the methodology scientists
which is,
use to derive these measures.
Where other scientists look at it. What is that called when they, the process?
Peer review.
Peer review. So we have peer review so that we don't have, that other people are looking at the science to accept it. And that's how we don't have to see it ourselves, because that's the scientific method, is that there is rigor in its
the same trust that you give a doctor.
Right.
Okay. The doctor
reads the x-ray,
takes an MRI, gives it to a specialist, and the MRI says, oh yeah, we have a kidney stone. Okay.
Right.
And then they come back and they tell you, well, according to the MRI and the interpretation of the MRI, you have a kidney stone. And you don't want to see the MRI. And actually, even if they brought the MRI out, you wouldn't be able to find your kidney on the MRI.
They'll get second opinions and this type of thing. And this is where you get concurrency of voices.
And you can go to another MRI interpreter and have them look at it, but you looking at it is not going to help you. Okay.
Right.
At some point, you have to trust that the experts looking at the MRI know enough about how to do this that you can trust their evaluation. Right. Now, there are problems. Sometimes they misinterpret an X-ray or a blood sample or whatever else. Sometimes people have illnesses that can be interpreted more than one different way. But ultimately, we have faith in
science,
the expert interpreting that piece of data and giving you feedback. We have more faith in that person doing it than your Uncle Ned, all right? Interpreting the same thing and giving you feedback. Now, that's how science works. That's how we've gotten to where we are today. Trusting people who know what they're doing, trusting engineers to build bridges, trusting doctors to interpret x-rays, and trusting scientists to collect data and interpret the data as best they can with current theory. Okay, that's how we do things. That's how we've gotten to where we are.
Right. And the peer review creates the concurrency of voices, that there's concurrency of what the data shows.
And science is also self-correcting. So if there was a line that the community was going down, and then new evidence started to seep in, people started interpreting the new evidence against the old dogma and seeing if the old dogma needs to be modified or thrown out. And we have had these kinds of scientific revolutions many times. This process works. It may be slow, but it works. And there's a lot of notoriety that scientists get overthrowing dogma. If the data is going another direction, and you are the person who can observe that first and get your results published, then and you can refute the current dogma, you will be celebrated. This happens all the time.
Right, and even that whole thing,
almost every day, someone is overthrowing some prior assumption. Right. Maybe not entirely, but
more data came in.
Little way, some nuanced way that they're modifying it, and we're going forward on a slightly different tangent.
And it was the same example.
It happens every day in science.
Well, with Fauci said, and the Trumpites and everybody has been criticizing him. Well, he's a liar because he said not to wear masks in the beginning. Yeah, well, in the beginning, we were realizing that the mask, first of all, we didn't have the protection.
We didn't have any.
It was a false sense of protection that you would be safe from the virus because you wore a piece of cloth on your face. And that's still true. You really need a respirator to of the level to really say that the virus will not get into you. So, there's different levels.
The problem here was actually the media. Just to take your example. I don't like getting involved in minutia, but the media was the problem. There are actually many types of masks, including respirators, like I own several, right? And there are some types of masks that don't do you much good.
Right.
They will do other people good if you're sick, but they won't do you any good. There are masks that do good for you, that meaning the virus can't get through the mask to get to you. But then this is a very complicated topic. And the media, the news media, is incapable of dealing with anything of complexity.
Yeah,
absolutely incapable.
And then when more data came,
capability,
and they realized that yes, to reduce the droplets, reduce anything over your face was better than nothing. That's what we discovered, right? That it was better. And anyway, so that's
it was easy. It was easier to give people recommendations when we had masks that people could, lay their hands on. Our medical system, and really our entire consumer system, is what we call JIT, just in time. There is zero warehousing of anything. we could have had a warehouse of PPE in anticipation of a pandemic. Gloves, masks, surgical gowns. We could have had
ventilators.
That stuff. We could have had that stuff laid up in advance of need. But we didn't, because it costs money. And plus the stuff goes bad when it's on the shelf for too long. Then you have to replace it. So no one wanted to spend the money. No one wanted to buy this stuff, put it on the shelf, and not use it. We always have just enough. I used to work in a hospital. I used to work in the shipping and receiving. And we would always have like 2 of everything on the shelf. There are like 5,000 different types of catheters. We would always have at least 2 on the shelf. And then when we got down to 1 or 0, we would order 2 more. Now, if you're doing that with masks and gowns and everything else, if you just have like, 2 boxes of masks, and that's all you ever have, and then when both boxes have been opened, you go ahead and you order 2 more, and that's all you ever have, then you have a problem when you have a pandemic. Mm-hmm. So the JIT economy and the way we do things to save money, be cheap, we got behind the 8 ball. We were not well positioned for a pandemic.
A lot of things.
And these are things that don't get discussed in the media because it's too complicated and it takes more than 5 seconds to discuss it.
And then one thing that's happening too in terms of supplies is they're running out of oxygen because a lot of people who go home, they need oxygen. Their lungs are so ravaged.
But a lot
of
people,
lungs are ravaged.
Everybody who comes to the hospital, when they first appear at the emergency and unloading from an ambulance, their first complaint is, I can't breathe. I have shortness of breath. So the first thing they do is they put them on oxygen.
Right. And then don't forget now also, last thing, and then we'll talk to you tomorrow, is 8 hours that the ambulances are having to wait outside right here in Santa Clara County. It's happening that there's, they're waiting outside. They can't get into the hospitals until somebody dies.
Pretty soon, the ambulances will stop responding because it doesn't make any sense for them to sit idling with a sick person in the back, coughing and sneezing and bleeding out, and getting their own staff sick.
Right.
The system is breaking down. The system is busted. Right. And that's going to manifest itself in basically a kind of a horror show.
Right. And we saw it with the Kaiser. There was, we were reading that the staff at Kaiser, there were 47, infections.
47 people got coronavirus. I'm kind of surprised it isn't, they tested positive. I'm kind of surprised that 100% of people don't test positive.
In the hospital,
because you're exposed to so much. Okay, it's just I'd be flabbergasted if these hospitals don't quickly have, given this current surge, don't have 100% positive coronavirus in the hospitals with staff. 100%. They're trying to protect themselves, but that's just not going to work.
Oh, and the other news, of course, what we were talking about with Governor Newsom is, got $2 billion from the CARES Act from the federal government, whatever, that now we're trying to get all these kids back into school. But what just happened, I was just reading in the UK, they're saying, no, we're not going back into school. The teacher unions are saying, no, we're not going back. And even my girlfriend, who's a teacher at a college, said it should be 100%.
And that might happen here,
virtual.
But we have to do everything the hard way. Okay. So we're going to send the kids back to school.
They're all going to get sick.
So the mothers can go back to work. Okay. And now the mothers are going to work. They're going to get sick. The kids are in school. They're going to get sick. After a week, everyone's going to come back home sick. And some of those parents are going to die as a consequence of this mismanagement. And some of those children are going to die as a consequence of this mismanagement. Then people become horrified, terrified, PTSD. They won't play anymore. They're not going to play this game anymore.
Right.
And then your systems collapse.
Yeah. Okay.
No one goes to work. No one goes to school. They may not go to school for years. They may not go to work for years.
It doesn't mean you stop learning. Every day you can keep learning.
Or you don't.
Why not? We can.
Well, maybe it doesn't work.
Yeah.
I mean, don't imagine that with a wave of the hand, it's all going to work out for you. Don't imagine that, because that's not how this is going to be. We are in a bad place.
I did see too that women are, a lot of women dropped out of the workforce because of the children home. So,
okay, that's why Gavin Newsom is going to pull out all the stops to make sure kids get back in school.
So women can get back in the workforce.
Yeah. No excuse not to be back in the workplace.
Yeah.
and they're basically accusing women of being lazy and shiftless and not dedicated enough. And they're not. They're just terrified. That's what they are. And why do they have to go back into the workplace?
And their instinct is to take care of their kids, and their kids are home, so they're taking care of it. So hopefully we can, all, both husbands and wives and children, families can rethink and rejigger. Oh, that was rejigger things. And I read something by David Borenstein. He was saying we need to start working at home, and that this has changed the whole, the whole thing has changed about working at home, and that needs to keep going on. And so,
well, then that's
going to be a lot better.
That's going to be really
death
hard
of transportation
for
and
restaurants
deaths of
to
our
do
cities.
that.
Yeah, but that he says that's why we have to rethink it all, because it's changing,
Right,
and
well,
we need to
okay,
change radically.
We'll see if anybody is open to the recommendation that we rethink everything. We'll see.
Okay, well, we have to do that. Okay,
We'll
we love
see
you.
If that was what happens.
Have a good night. Bye. Okay, I guess I have to go over there and
Don't you think?
turn it off. Okay. All right. Do you have any last words?
No. You lost your pom-pom.
Oh, I did today.
They fall off at the drop of a hat. Could be on the floor. We'll find it. I think that's it right there.
So I gotta go in the street. All right, good. So I did it.